two comments just in starting. I wasn't sure I should stay. I looked up and I saw my minister coming in and I said, oh my God. And yet it's a good thing. I'm sure it's a good thing. The star is in the right place. And also I want to say that I couldn't teach the classes that I do enjoy teaching here in the humanities without Hale Woodruff's murals, because he covers the waterfront. And in the class, the humanities class, we do talk about a seminal work by Martin Bernal, who talks about the fact that all of our cultures are based in the African root, and of course he's been attacked many, many times. But I think that that set of murals, as Tina knows, I couldn't teach it without her. It starts with Africa, the root of everything, and moves into the sharing of the information with all of the other cultures of the world. And they're very interested until part 3, where they get very upset when they realize what is really the truth of the thing. And so they can't stand the truth, and they start destroying the art. And this is literally and figuratively what has happened for our art over the period of our time in this country. And then it moves on into the modern arts, and then recaps all of the artists of the world, the major ones, and brings the muse of the Greeks along with the African, Shango is he? And for me, I just couldn't say it any better. It really summarizes everything we have been trying to say in the class. And so I'm thankful to Hale Woodruff, and I'm also very thankful to W.E.B. Du Bois, who was something else. He called himself a humble disciple of art, and he was being very self-effacing, of course, and I guess to set a tone for his probably forthcoming truths and bombshells, as was the case in many of the presentations that he made. It's abundantly clear that if we try to address the myriad areas of inquiry and confrontation and arts exposures in which he found interest and involvement, it would keep us here for quite a while, so we really wouldn't be trying to do that today. At this point, we know that he was as tirelessly informed and driven in this area of the better life for all as he was in the other various aspects of life in the 19th and 20th century USA. I'm mesmerized by the sheer volume and pursuit of his interest and the sustained nature of his exploration and thorough involvement with every subject known to man. I don't think that he missed any. Right. Miraculous is just the only term that comes to mind. Conviction, physical strength also, steady focus of mind. His claim for love of all man, however, seemed not to apply entirely to his sustained attacks on Booker T. Washington or on Alain Locke, who just happened to also be a Harvard graduate. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. And major organizer of the Harlem Renaissance movement in American Negro history. In the case of Washington, one wonders if Du Bois had any idea of the relationship between the practical arts of Tuskegee, which resulted in actually aesthetic, brick making, and then building, and architecture, a school thereof. Or if Du Bois was aware of the very fine visual art, such as oil paintings, actually, produced by George Washington Carver. A lot of us are not aware that George Washington Carver himself was a painter in between his experiments, I suppose. Of course, in Du Bois's course of global battles for the citizenship of Negroes over the years, he returned periodically to Atlanta University to regroup. At least that's the way I put it. It's a good thing we were here, because he needed that. It's almost like today putting our cell phone on charge, because it can only run if it gets revitalized periodically. So I think he used Atlanta University very much in that way. It was a haven. These periods were also punctuated by trips, of course, to Europe, Africa finally, and the Far East, during which he was properly impressed with the arts of the world while being documented by our government as a communist sympathizer. A major example of the politics of the arts, which is such a formidable aspect in for anyone who is dealing with the arts. His arts and strengths were undoubtedly in the outreach to groups, the organizing of ideas, and the vociferous literary record of his thoughts and creative work. His ideas for the better interaction of peoples of the world. In the last days, of course, he reached out to the newly emerging African countries in the art of diplomacy and practical guidance for their emancipations. It was really interesting to zero in on some of the things he actually said to Kwame Nkrumah in particular. Of course, we know that he moved there just before his death because he had, again, been pounced upon by the United States government. However, I must say that in some of the research and reading some of the things that were going on and that he was saying, how he was saying them, when he was saying them, one wonders how he got away as well as he did. But he was, I think, sent by God. I think he was an angel. I think he was touched and protected. And he did his due. He did what he came here to do. However, in my mind, thinking about him over the years, I have always felt that there was something about him that gave him these great ideas, that the lights went on in his head about what to do and how to do it. He spent his whole life trying to plow the fields of diplomacy in terms of the arts, and I think he did a formidable job, of course. But in the process, I felt he must have been getting it from somewhere. We haven't paid, I don't think, a lot of attention in our research to where he came from and what really made him who he was, and where he got some of his ideas immediately, especially of the time that he sort of began to come forth. I think everybody knows his background from Great Barrington, Massachusetts. I really want to spend some time researching that because I understand that that also is the home of James Weldon Johnson, one of my other favorite folks that we lean on in the class, because we talk about we talk about the myth of humankind, the myths and different cultures' myths, and we end with the American Indian myth where they say that God made man out of clay, and the first time he left him in the oven too long, and that was you. And the second time he didn't leave him in long enough, and that was white folks. And the third time he got it right, and that was the Indians. That was their myth. Well, it just rang a bell in my mind, because as you know, the creation that James Weldon Johnson wrote, all of the researching the sermons of black preachers, one of the sermons follows that exact pattern. There's nothing new under the sun, and if it's true, it's worth repeating, because the truth will set us free. I've long believed, though, as I said, that he was getting help from somewhere else. When he went to Germany, that was kind of a key for me, looking at his biography, that he was there in the 1860s, the time when psychology was being developed, and he was right in the middle of it. He had to be getting the vibes from Freud and Jung and the great philosophers Kant, and he had also had a very good jump start at Harvard from some of these German philosophers, European thinkers of the time who were beginning to change our way of understanding ourselves. And so to me that went directly to his thing of understanding people and how he used that in his career. First thing being, the minute he got back, more or less, he did this marketing study. Of course, that came home to me as a marketer, business person, having been at New York University during the time when marketing research did not even exist. If you can imagine that there was such a time. Not as a formal discipline. It came on while I was there, and wouldn't you know it, instead of, or in addition to our final paper, we had to conduct a marketing research survey. and I walked in Teaneck, New Jersey, getting people's ideas and feedback on certain things. But I think that that was a time of change. And so he used that, I think, in his development of the study of the Philadelphia Negro. It has been my ongoing interest to know that he had this initial European exposure and to the then changing thought of the great minds of the new discipline of psychology. Du Bois was unusually exposed to the centers and to this thinking and to knowledge of psychology and workings of the human mind. No doubt he was inspired to apply this awareness to general ways in his research. His later work in Philadelphia, as I said, showed this. Curiously, he has moved to conduct an unusual solemn ceremony for himself. He was moved when he was 25 to do this. According to the research by Bernard Bell, one of the sources that I have used, at a solitary nocturnal celebration with candles, oils, and prayers as a sacrifice to the zeitgeist on his 25th birthday in Germany, alone. He had one of these weird, you might say, periods. He set up this whole situation for himself to commune with the spirits. And I do believe that he connected, and that those are the things that have helped make him such a successful person in the many ways that we know that he was. I also think this might have been one of the forerunners of his Greek letter organizations in general, and of his the Boule, which he started here in the United States among black men and women. In this commitment, he subordinated personal gain in turn to self and racial sufficiency by accomplishments in social science, art, and politics. He dreamed that the Negro self-sufficient culture would emerge, and that this dream would become the base for the later stage play, in fact, called Pearly Victorious. How many of us are old enough to have seen Pearly Victorious? Ossie Davis, where he explains all of these things. I believe it was exactly an outtake of Du Bois's writing. According to Rappersand, his major biographer, these ideas also helped him to develop the talented 10th concept. Even Steve Jobs of Apple, and I've been telling my students this for some time now, I give them a field trip to go and check out the hieroglyphics and the symbols of Egyptian culture that we have right here in the AU Center. It's an Easter egg hunt. And when they come back, we talk about just those things. And Steve Jobs has said that without a class in calligraphy, which I associate with hieroglyphics, and also the picture writing of the Japanese, and also the Dinkra symbols of the Ghana people, that there are ways of putting tremendous amounts of information in a little picture, and when you go there, it opens up the world. So Steve Jobs said that he likes nothing more than working between the humanities and his machines. You have to bring it home today, you know, for young people, in order for them to just turn on the on button, or shall I say turn off the on button, and join the class. Again, these exposures no doubt contributed to the sustained interest in the later Philadelphia and Georgia market studies, and in his strong interest in the fine arts, reconciled and folk arts of his people. His grandmother remembers visiting with, his granddaughter remembered visiting with Du Bois to Elizabeth Prophet, who was a well-known, one of the early black female sculptresses. And I did a paper when I was in school here on the fact that most of the black women artists of the early period were actually sculptresses as opposed to being painters. I thought that was interesting. We can do that study next time. She actually worked in this little building right on the campus at Spelman when you go in this side gate. And that was her sculpture studio. It was still the sculpture studio, and I was there as an art major, and I still have the sculptures that I did there. Maybe it's worth something at this point, who knows? But he helped to encourage Spelman College during the early he encouraged her to come to this college in the 30s. He also devoted an issue of the crisis to her and her sculpture, as many issues were devoted to the fine arts. We know that he wrote voraciously about the arts. Often cited by the U.S. government for involvements with and statements on the emerging communist countries. His passport was taken at least twice, and he and his second wife, Shirley Graham, moved to Ghana, and the both of them are buried there on the site of the Du Bois Center. I have had the honor to visit that center as well, and I brought home some little books on him written by African people who knew him at that time. And unfortunately, I didn't bring it with me today, but it's available if anyone is interested to see it. It has beautiful pictures of all of his life and all of his children. Him as a baby. It starts with him as a baby. As Dr. Evans has so well articulated, his energy and example will not die. I have been able to visit the center, as I said, and use the unusual scholarly works also of another African writer who tells us many things about how Africa, the West Africa, was populated from East. Let us leave with words that Du Bois chose for his 1909 Atlanta publications, The Social Betterment of the Negro American. And I have the honor of owning several of these publications. This one is from 1909. And on the back, he said he has used Ella Wheeler Wilcox to send by silence, which we know he never did, when we should protest, makes cowards out of men. The human race has climbed on protest. Had no voice been raised against injustice, ignorance, and lust, the Inquisition yet would serve the law, and guillotines decide our least disputes. The few who dare must speak and speak again to right the wrongs of many. Thank you so much.